Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 6 of HBO's House of the Dragon, entitled Small Folk. So, this is the first episode of the season I'm actually kind of down on. This episode felt like filler in a way that no episode of this show or Game of Thrones has ever really felt for me. There are a couple of aspects of this season that have felt drawn out, and that's a pretty big deal for a show that has generally wasted little to no time up to this point. But I think that's what made this episode stand out and ultimately become my personal breaking point with giving these specific things grace. Like, generally, this show is the opposite of Game of Thrones in that if they say they're going to do something or go somewhere, it often happens in, like, the next scene. Definitely not, several episodes later. Conversely, Game of Thrones might make us wait seasons to pay off that sort of thing. But there are a couple of subplots this season that this show has really dragged out. And this episode was the breaking point for me because it started by, you know what, I'm just going to talk about it now so I can stop being vague and alluding to these things that I'm referring to. I'm talking specifically about Harrenhal, both what's going on with Daemon there and the inevitable arrival of armies and dragons, and what is now likely going to be a big battle in the finale, letting me know that we probably won't get to Harrenhal next week either. But the way they're dragging out the events there that are going to take place at Harrenhal, it's officially irritating to me now. Like, we've had, I don't know, what is this, like four consecutive episodes now of Daemon tripping balls in Harrenhal and coming to grips with his deepest regrets and his desires. And we got the point after, like, the first episode of that, maybe two. Now it just feels like they're beating a dead horse with the same concept, and I'm just ready to see how Daemon is going to react. How is Daemon going to behave in response to what he's experienced and what he's learned? And I think when we look back on this season, we're largely going to have great things to say. This has been a great season so far. But we'll also remember how this season took Daemon, one of its best characters, and tied him up, giving him nothing to do but have hallucinations, the point of which was immediately clear after the first time they did it, the first episode, but doing this for at minimum 4 episodes because there still might be another one. And okay, so let me just move to the other thing. The other Harrenhal-based issue is the delaying of the inevitable huge stakes battle that's going to take place there. I think I'm on the record in, like, my video for, like, episode 1 or 2, like, really early, saying that it was immediately clear that Harrenhal was going to be a pivotal location in this war. Now, I don't mind them saving a big, huge, giant climactic battle for the finale. Like, don't get me wrong, that's perfectly fine, that's sound strategy, but last episode, they started to make it clear that the confrontation was starting. They talked about the Lannister army heading there. They leaned into Daemon building an army there for himself or for Furriner or whatever, but they still leaned into the army being built there. Then in the very first scene this episode, we see the Lannister army actually on the march. They're not there yet, but we see them on the way. They say they're going to wait there at the Tooth to meet up with Aemond and Vhagar. Shortly thereafter, probably like the end of the next scene, Aemond sends Criston Cole there as well. So I'm like, okay, this Harrenhal shit is finally about to pop off. The first, 2 scenes of this episode are about people going to Harrenhal. Maybe by the end of this episode, the climax of episode 6 is going to be the Harrenhal battle. I don't think you'll be surprised to learn that I was disappointed when we reached the end of this episode and nothing had happened at Harrenhal. Now there's 2 episodes left, and I don't see why they'd have a conflict that they've been setting up all season play out in the penultimate episode, so it stands to reason that we're likely in for another week of peddling in place next week as well, and that's kind of bothering me. And then this has also delayed the inevitable conflict between Daemon and Aemond that they resumed hyping up a little bit in this episode, and that better not be a goddamn disappointment. But sad to say, that's not all I didn't like about this episode either. Hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms. If you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't, I am an acquired taste, but you can join the Patreon where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today, Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel, or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there since it's the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not going to lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. The last thing I didn't like about this episode is fairly minor, so I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But I want to start first by talking about Aemon here, because he remains the most fascinating character on the show for me. And after the opening scene with the Lannister army, we see Aemon kind of like arrogantly spouting off instructions to his small council, and they really play up the arrogance here, directly referring to him as such, and his dismissiveness, his very just kind of like there's no room for interpretation. It's what I say goes. I don't know, man. He was looking mighty kingly to me, but and smart, but yes, arrogant, but also smart. Particularly in contrast with Aegon. You have Aegon, who Aegon was. I'm not going to describe him. You all watched it. And then contrasting that with Aemon. Aemon looks really kingly to me, guys. But arrogance will likely be his downfall. But his plan to align with the Triarchy to take on Corlys's blockade so the people of King's Landing can eat, that was a good idea, man. Like, I don't see anyone else coming up with ideas to feed the people. All they're doing is like, yeah, people are complaining, and then talking shit on whatever idea that somebody comes up with. But they speak briefly of setting up an alliance with the Greyjoys by marrying Alicent off to one of them, which I liked because it speaks to, one, how Aemon strategizes, but it also speaks to how he views women, and then I think, how he views his mother, and then also in a larger sense, how he views women. Kind of like these flesh-based chess pieces to move at his own will for his advantage. Then later, he tries to paint Alicent as unfit for his council, despite her consistently making good points and having the experience for it. This is where I think his arrogance will harm him, but his strategizing has been solid thus far. But that's why I like Aemon, though. He's multi-layered, he's complex. You see this same dynamic with his ruthlessness, but then contrasting with kind of like this meekness and vulnerability that he shows with the prostitute that he's always laying with. And then, when Alicent reminds him in the audience that all of this is really just born out of him being bullied as a kid.
Have the indignities of your childhood not yet sufficiently been avenged?
You know, this show gets a lot of shit for not having characters as compelling as Game of Thrones, but Aemon doesn't get enough credit for being a good character. And I think some people may also be revisionist historying Game of Thrones as well. Like, you're comparing a show and thinking about characters that you spent not just 8 seasons, but probably like 14 years. 14 years with, and this show's not even done with its second season yet. And Game of Thrones has some pretty weak characters in season 2 as well. That it took seasons to flesh these people out. Like, I remember thinking Stannis was a terrible character in season 2. By season 5, Stannis is really interesting. So I think give this show a little bit more grace with the characters. Also, I think for a show that has pretty much only been set in 2 locations, King's Landing and Dragonstone, and consists largely of characters from the same family, like, it's done a pretty decent job of creating a separation amongst them and building out how and why they're in opposition to one another. But getting back to the main narrative, that's what Team Green is dealing with in this episode, setting up the clash at Harrenhal, but also dealing with the possibility that Aegon might yet live, and also finding a potential hand for Aemon. So after Larys essentially asked to be hand, Aemon answers my question from last week about what the show is going to do about Otto, saying that Otto is going to be his hand, and he sends Larys to fetch him. This episode makes a point to essentially tell us that Otto is missing. No one can find him. No one's heard from him. They've sent ravens. Nothing. My theory is the Team Green is fucked around, and now they're about to find out. Like, Otto is probably going to link up with Team Black, and that'd be a really damaging blow for Rhaenyra to have such a brilliant and evil tactician on her side going up against his family. Aemon also continues to toy around with the idea of finishing the job on his brother, but I'm also starting to wonder if they're gonna like set it up and make it look like Aemon's gonna do it, but ultimately Alicent might end up doing it. Like, whether she believes it's for the good of the realm or to merely put him out of his misery, like, it could make for a great scene if she has to suffocate her own son with a pillow or some shit, and she's, like, crying, and it's like, she's doing it for the good of the realm or whatever. Speaking of Alicent, great scene when her and Helena get attacked by the people of King's Landing outside of the Sept. This entire subplot of the people in King's Landing being hungry while they watch the elite flaunt their abundance and then ultimately end up rebelling, it feels directly ripped from the real-life Peasants' Revolt of 1381. But speaking of which, this seems like a good time to segue into talking about Team Black, because their story finally converges with the King's Landing Peasants Revolt this week, and I think it's worth looking into. So we're going to start with the first attempt at finding a dragon rider for with Sir Darkly. Not for Sir Darkly, with Sir Darkly. This is this guy they think they're going to ride Sea Smoke. And I loved how hyped this dude was to fly a dragon. Rhaenyra was just like, yeah, FYI, you should be prepared to die. And he's all...
I well understand the risk, and I accept it with gladness.
Again, it is with great gladness and shocking arrogance that Sir Darkly meets his demise. Like, for starters, why did he make Sea Smoke wait so long? Like, Sea Smoke knelt down and nods at him like, all right, come on, get on. Then he takes comically long to approach, and I'm just like, Sea Smoke's just gonna fry him out of impatience. Like, it's rude to make a human wait that long, and you're gonna make a dragon wait? And then when he finally gets there, why does he prematurely celebrate? Like, he's like, man, my man's like, I did it. I've conquered dragon riding. He's not even on yet. And Sea Smoke was just fed up at that point. And I don't blame him. I don't blame Sea Smoke for what it did. I'm not saying he should have killed Darkly, but I understand. But that was a great scene, though. Super suspenseful. I love this shot of Sea Smoke. And I love Darkly still having to slit his throat while he was frying. But now I want to talk about what I didn't like with the Team Black plotline. And it wasn't this.
We may yet retake...
It is my fault, I think, that you have forgotten to fear me.
That was my shit. Like, I'm tired of her whole ass slick mouth counsel. Like, I was so glad she did that. Anyway, this week we see Mysaria's plan to win over the people of King's Landing come to fruition. Early on, it's another week of seeing the people of King's Landing starve and struggle to find food. They're forced to watch as a cart full of sheep that they could have eaten is being brought to just essentially throw away to the dragons. And I mean, having that cart go through the streets of King's Landing was just bad optics. Like, they should have had, they should have a non-angry dragon, like a gentle one, that they use solely for transport. Like, go pick up the sheep from Dorne. That's the good sheep. You could have a couple as a snack on the way back, and you bring them back here, boom, done, no problem. But no, they have this cart go through the streets of King's Landing. So in response, Rhaenyra and Mysaria send a bunch of food across Blackwater Bay on small boats to the people. We see Hugh the Blacksmith, future dragon rider, knock some guy out and take his food rather than running to the shore and getting his own like everybody else. But that's just Hugh, man. That's our guy. The plan works, though, and Mysaria and Rhaenyra celebrate by Mysaria sharing a story about her dad impregnating her and how she can no longer bear children, and then they make out because of that. Like, what the fuck was that? Like, yeah, sure, you could say it's something born out of, like, mutual respect and you know, they don't respect us women around here, and we're so good at making plans, and we're great tacticians, and yada, yada, yada. But they've never even hinted at these two having anything beyond a mutual men don't respect us understanding. Then all of a sudden they're making out? Like, don't get me wrong, it was fucking hot. I'm just saying, that shit was really out of left field, and they did nothing to set that up. Like, I can assume an explanation, but there was nothing on the screen to hint at this becoming romantic, and that was just jarring and arousing for me. So, lastly, I do need to talk about Daemon in a bit more detail than merely expressing my dissatisfaction with how stuck in place his subplot is. What really irritated me about the Daemon shit this week was that they faked it like he was about to leave, and then he didn't. So he sees Viserys this week, and yeah, fine. I'm not even going to talk about what happens because, like I said, Daemon's issues are painfully clear at this point. So the Viserys dream, just the beating of a dead horse, showing us the same regrets and deep honest thoughts that Daemon has. Same old, right? But after this first one, he tries to leave, and I'm like, yes, now we're finally getting somewhere. But then Alice stops him, and they have another one of the same conversations that they've been having all season, with her telling him ultimately to wait 3 days and that the winds will shift. He returns back to the castle, resumes having more visions with Viserys, which again pissed me off because they made it seem like he was about to leave, then went right back to the same shit. And then presumably 3 days later, Grover Tully dies, and now Daemon has, for all intents and purposes, seemingly inherited the Riverlands. Everything seems to be a setup for the confrontation at Harrenhal next week, but again, why have the ultimate climax that you've been building up to all season in the second to last episode? Might as well save it for the finale. So now I'm really worried the next week is going to feel like more filler and delays as well. Lastly, after Sea Smoke fries Sir Darkly, he keeps saying, I don't know Sea Smoke's pronouns. after it fries Sir Darkly, it escapes. It ends up in front of Adam, the brother of Alan, both bastard sons of Corlys. The show's been setting up Alan as important all season, but as this episode ends, we learn that Sea Smoke has a writer. They leave it on a cliffhanger regarding who ends up with Sea Smoke, but Sea Smoke is about to fry Adam, not Alan, at the end of the episode. But then the preview for next week seems to give it away. And I'm not going to say what it is in case you want to be surprised next week, but don't watch the commercial for the next episode because they seem to give away what happens. And this is fairly inconsequential for the episode, but it's not a huge deal. But they revealed this, they treated this reveal as a cliffhanger, but it's just another example in an episode that felt like its only purpose was to just drag things out longer. Like, we could have done it, but we're just going to kick that can down the street too. So, I don't know. Let me know. Am I being too hard on this episode? Let me know what you thought in the comments. And until next week, the penultimate episode where we still don't have the Harrenhal battle. Peace.